So we had a meeting with all these candidates. This is 1980. And Reagan was there and other candidates, and I was sitting next. We were seated in alphabetical order by surname. So Reagan was on the extreme left, and I was sitting next to him. So we got into a conversation. This became quite notable. Now, my adversary, one of the key adversaries of me in this whole business who made himself my adversary, was George W. Bush, H.W. Bush. My presence got Bush all upset. And Bush began to do foolish things, and he lost a debate with Reagan in Manchester. And then he really lost it in Nashua. This is all on record. It's all available. And what he said, I'm paying for this microphone. Reagan did. And Reagan really was a runaway nominee for the Republican convention at that point on.
Beginning in early 1981, LaRouche and his associates were brought into meetings with members of Reagan's National Security Council. After opening a dialogue with the Reagan administration, LaRouche was contacted by Soviet representatives at the UN, who asked to hear his assessment of the new Reagan administration. His collaboration with Reagan's National Security Council and certain elements in the Soviet Union provided the background for Reagan's request that LaRouche take part in an official back channel with Soviet representatives to manage increasingly tense relations. 2 months later, LaRouche was meeting with the Soviet embassy official in Washington, Yevgeny Shishnev. However, certain elements in the Reagan administration, who were pushing the endgame doctrine of the Trilateral Commission and MAD, saw LaRouche's collaboration with the new president as a considerable threat. As soon as this back channel was opened, Henry Kissinger personally contacted FBI Director William Webster and Roy Godson of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, requesting that they target Lyndon LaRouche. At the same time Kissinger was initiating this frame-up, Lyndon LaRouche was invited to Mexico to meet with President José López Portillo. López Portillo asked LaRouche what he thought the Wall Street bankers and others intended for Mexico. LaRouche replied that they intended to destroy Mexico through financial warfare. By the fall, that forecast was in the process of being fully borne out. The nationalist circles around President López Portillo requested a policy to address this crisis, to which LaRouche responded by publishing the book-length report Operation Juarez in August 1982, calling for the reorganization of the pooled debts of South and Central America as a source of long-term, low-interest credit for great infrastructure and high-technology projects. The adoption of LaRouche's proposal by President López Portillo stunned the financial establishment. According to Kissinger collaborator Leo Chern, who chaired the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board on Third World Debt, Portillo's actions sent shockwaves through Washington, D.C.
The development of strategic ballistic missile defense using laser weapons.
By December 22, 1982, LaRouche issued a warning to the Soviets, encouraging them to accept the proposal for beam weapons. Otherwise, those underlying problems of the Soviet economy would bring their system down. Despite his warning, the Soviets continued an intensive military buildup under Premier Andropov, who was convinced that his political influence was bounded within the rules of a multipolar world system. Out of fear of the consequences of breaking with that framework in favor of the economic and strategic cooperation which Reagan and LaRouche had proposed, Andropov rejected the offer, and when he died in February 1984, his successor Gorbachev assumed the same framework and pushed the Soviet economy beyond its already overstretched limits in an attempt to eliminate the Western Empire with a thermonuclear first strike before they developed the proposed defense system. Shishnev reported back to LaRouche, saying that he had been instructed from the highest levels to say that Moscow had agreed that the beam weapon proposal was feasible, but would reject it out of hand because the Soviet Union would be unable to compete with the United States under conditions of a revived U.S. economy. LaRouche once again warned his Soviet counterpart that if they were to reject Reagan's forthcoming offer and go ahead with a military surge to achieve first strike capability, the Soviet Union would collapse in about 5 years. On March 23, 1983, Reagan was scheduled to deliver a nationally televised address on the Soviet military buildup. There were 2 proposals for the speech that Reagan delivered. One had a section where Reagan was going to announce LaRouche's program, which he called the Strategic Defense Initiative. James Baker III encouraged Reagan to use the second version of the speech, which omitted LaRouche's proposal.
Lyndon LaRouche understood that this was a decision made by the president over and against the recommendations of virtually all of his top advisors. The only member of the Reagan team at the White House or in the cabinet who was really 100% with him on the SDI proposal was Judge William Clark, who was the National Security Advisor. The White House Chief of Staff was James Baker III. He was opposed. The Secretary of State was George Shultz. He was opposed. Even Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger was not a big supporter of the SDI proposal. We later found out that right up until the very last moment, literally before the TV cameras turned on and President Reagan delivered the address, there were attempts by James Baker III, the White House Chief of Staff, to strip that portion out of the president's speech. And even though there had been a briefing on the speech given to reporters earlier in the day, if President Reagan had not gone on national television and made that announcement in the way that he did, it would not have happened.
I clearly recognize that defensive systems have limitations and raise certain problems and ambiguities. If paired with offensive systems, they can be viewed as fostering an aggressive policy, and no one wants that. But with these considerations firmly in mind, I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete.
The announcement by President Reagan caught the world completely by surprise. In fact, probably the only people on the planet who were not shocked and completely taken off guard by what Reagan did was Lyndon LaRouche and even just a handful of others inside the LaRouche organization who had been directly involved in the back-channel work between the Reagan administration and the Soviet government, and who therefore had some appreciation of just how serious the White House, the president himself, was about the idea of bringing an end to this era of thermonuclear terror.
That their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies.
Taking up the challenge to reduce the need for nuclear arsenals, President Ronald Reagan proposed in 1983 that the United States...
The following day, each and every opponent of LaRouche was shocked. The media had no clue how to report the day's top development, Reagan's call for an end to mutually assured destruction. All over the world, LaRouche's policies for international development were spreading. In the face of worsening financial and strategic breakdowns, LaRouche's unique ability to forecast and propose solutions to those crises had reached the point at which the widespread adoption of his policies would have meant the absolute end to any relics of an imperial or colonial system.